It was one of those rare moments when Hollywood magic collided with raw human pride. And the result never made it to the screen. Picture a glittering MGM stage in early 1955, buzzing with dancers in sequined costumes, brass trumpets blazing, and cameras rolling for the biggest musical gamble of the decade. Samuel Goldwyn had poured an unprecedented $5.5 million into adapting Broadway's Guys and Dolls for the silver screen, courting two of the biggest stars alive to carry his vision. On one side stood Marlon Brando, fresh off his Oscar win for On the Waterfront, method acting guru and unpredictable wild card. On the other perched Frank Sinatra, Hollywood's golden, voiced Rat Pack icon, a born showman whose weekly Las Vegas fee outstripped the entire budgets of many contemporaries. Both legends, both giants, but both destined to clash over a deceptively simple scene. This controversial moment revolved around what would have been the film's most extravagant dance number, set in Havana's sweltering nightclubs. Goldwyn envisioned a kaleidoscopic sequence, 50 Latin dancers swirling under strobe lights, mariachis wailing in counterpoint to the orchestra, and our two leads, Sky Masterson and Nathan Detroit, locked in a sultry pas de deux. He'd commissioned fresh arrangements of Marry the Man Today and Fugu for Tin Horns, planning to expand the stage into a 360-degree panorama. Costumes glistened with gold lame, props included a fully functional cigar bar, and smoke machines pumping sultry Cuban air. In rehearsals, Brando, under vocal tutelage and with sweat on his brow, nailed every step with fierce dedication. Sinatra, in contrast, treated it like any nightclub spot, sliding through his lines and moves with effortless charm. Until the dance required a tricky lift that threatened his carefully cultivated image. On day 3 of trials, under the harsh glare of 20-foot arc lights, Brando executed a flawless overhead lift, hoisting Simmons with studied grace. The cameras hummed approvingly. Then it was Sinatra's turn. He approached with a grin, tipped an imaginary hat, and easily hit his mark, until the moment arrived to hoist Gene Simmons above his head and spin her skyward. Sinatra froze, muscles coiled, grin abruptly replaced by a slick of sweat. The rehearsed partnership shelved decades of friendship and rivalry in an instant. Frank simply refused the lift. He muttered, "I'm no strong man, Marlon," half joking, half insulted. Brando snapped back, "And yet you fancy yourself a dancer." The crew bristled. The choreographer hissed directions. But Sinatra, ever the perfectionist, would not budge. Word spread swiftly before the footage even rolled. Goldwyn's memo, later uncovered in studio archives, lamented that Sinatra refused to execute the signature lift, insisting that no man with a singing career like mine should appear unsupported. Studio brass begged him to reconsider. Sinatra offered to drop $50,000 from his fee in exchange for cutting the lift altogether. Brando, indignant, declared he'd only film with the scene intact. Two mammoth egos, neither willing to bow. Tensions crackled like faulty wiring. For 2 days, cameras captured dummy runs, half-hearted pratfalls, and rehearsals drained of their original energy. Costumes remained pristine, sets remained untouched, but the magic had vanished. Behind closed doors, the real battle unfolded. Sinatra's camp claimed he feared injury. Brando's retort painted a picture of Sinatra, too vain to appear held aloft by anyone else. Gossip columns feasted on the drama. Blue Eyes balks at Brando's lift splashed across gossip rags, while Tinseltown insiders whispered of a feud even more combustible than the infamous cheesecake incident. The music once meant to surge into a crescendo now sounded like background fuzz in the producer's office. Goldwyn, desperate, offered to reroute the lift onto a crane rig or employ special effects, but Sinatra rebuffed every creative workaround. The star had made up his mind. no lift, no film. Directors whispered of firing him. Makeup artists held their breath. The entire production teetered on the brink. At the heart of it all lay the delicate interplay of image and ambition. Brando embraced the lift as a method actor's crucible, physical, unedited, raw emotion shot in a single take. For him, it was proof he could transcend the dramatic stage and step, quite literally, onto the grandest musical canvas ever built. Sinatra, whose entire career thrived on seamless blends of song and suave one-liners, saw the lift as a threat to his carefully controlled persona. In his mind, he wasn't here to create another method masterpiece. He was here to charm the world, to let his voice carry the narrative rather than his arms. And when push came to shove, quite literally, he drew his line in the sand. Rumors that Goldwyn might recast or rewrite the dance explodes across studio walls. But power in 1950s Hollywood often came down to the balance of egos a producer could manage. Sinatra held the star power to tank a film. Brando held the artistry to derail the musical fantasy Goldwyn craved. So the studio pivoted, and a trimmed-down version of the Havana sequence made the final cut, sans lift. Yet viewers never saw the full spectacle that should have been. Instead, we got a taste, a promise of grandeur, and left wondering what might have been. Inside Goldwyn's executive offices, panic brewed. A memorandum marked top secret landed on producers' desks, forecasting a budget overrun if the Havana lift remained sabotaged. Writers were summoned to rewrite the sequence. The memo cited a worst-case scenario, an additional 7 shooting days, and 200,000 in costs. Meanwhile, costume department head Millie Ortiz drafted sketches for a truncated Cuban tableau, eliminating lifts entirely and replacing them with dramatic torch-lit walkways. Director Joseph L. Mania approved trial storyboards, but the creative team knew they faced an uphill battle. Backlot carpenters prepped for a scaled-down set, nailing together a skeletal framework in lieu of the planned 360-degree surround. Yet none of these contingency plans addressed the heart of the conflict, two icons warring over ego, image, and the unspoken fear of creative obsolescence. Coffee station gossip morphed into unofficial strategy sessions, with third assistant directors whispering rumors that Brando considered resigning unless Sinatra relented. A breakthrough proposal surfaced that would change everything truly dramatically. Under pressure, cinematographer George Falsey proposed a daring split-screen technique to preserve the illusion of a shared performance, while allowing each actor to follow independent choreography. Film Brando executing the lift against a green screen backdrop and capture Sinatra on a parallel set performing his steps and lines without crane or wires. In post-production, the editor would stitch both halves together, masking seams with dynamic camera angles and fading transitions. Goldwyn initially bristled, calling it cinematic sorcery. But desperate measures prevailed. Within 48 hours, both versions were shot on covert schedules. First, Brando lifted Simmons in 15 seamless takes, his method finesse on full display. 2 nights later, Sinatra dazzled on a mock-up Havana club set, improvising nuanced flourishes to compensate for any missing aerial moments. Lead editor Harold F. Kress later called it one of Hollywood's trickiest splices, a testament to collaborative inventiveness born of production crisis. Test screenings hailed the sequence as entirely flawless, brilliantly masking the chaos behind the scenes. Despite the clever splice, whispers of the omitted lift persisted among industry insiders. Frank Sinatra, never one to surrender the narrative, spun the story in interviews, claiming he had prioritized safety over stunt spectacle. Marlon Brando, meanwhile, winked at journalists, hinting that the scene carried extra weight because it remained unseen. Film scholars later framed the incident as emblematic of the 1950s studio system, a collision of star power, technical artistry, and the inherent tension between performance and persona. Retrospective documentaries dissected the footage side by side with rehearsal outtakes. Cinephiles proposed digital reconstructions, theorizing what the full sequence might look like had wires and split screens given way to raw physicality. Fans debate whether the truncated Havana number, soaring yet restrained, embodies the unspoken compromises that shaped classic musicals. The saga of that single refused lift has become a touchstone in film lore, still reminding us that in cinema, what never appears on screen can be as fascinating as what does. Today, cinephiles and historians still unearth rare behind the scenes reels and rehearsal outtakes, eager to piece together the full Havana vision that nearly vanished forever. Film festivals have screened reconstruction experiments, inviting audiences to compare wire-fueled lifts with the final polished edit. Critics note that the sanitized version reflects broader compromises of the studio era, where star image often outweighed raw spectacle. Yet this very tension elevates guys and dolls into a case study of collaborative problem-solving under pressure. In the end, the missing lift remains more than a technical footnote. It symbolizes the delicate balance between artistry and ego. It reminds us that every frame on screen carries with it an invisible history of negotiations, fear, and unfilmed moments. And perhaps most importantly, it proves that some of the greatest cinematic dramas unfold long before the director calls action. Always. Beyond the immediate production crisis, the omitted lift resonated through MGM's musical department, influencing choreographers and composers who sought balance between spectacle and practicality. Music supervisor Johnny Green recalled adjusting orchestral scores to accommodate trimmed sequences, finessing brass swells into more intimate passages that complemented Sinatra's vocal nuance rather than overwhelming it. On set, actors took heed. Natalie Wood refined her lifts with rigorous safety drills, and Gene Kelly instituted daily physical conditioning to ensure he could support his partners without hesitation. In Hollywood circles, the story of the missing lift grew into myth, recounted at union meetings and gala banquets as evidence of the delicate art of compromise. Even physical therapists who serviced the stars reported increased demand for shoulder and back treatments immediately following the Havana sessions. The unfilmed moment rippled outwards, a reminder that behind every dazzling performance lies an invisible chain of technical, creative, and ultimately human negotiations. And every actor carries a story behind spotlight. In the aftermath of the Havana sequence's transformation, cast and crew found themselves at a curious crossroads. Dancers who had trained tirelessly to execute the lift, spending days drilling the precise timing of footwork, wrist grips, and arching backflips, felt that a piece of the show's soul had slipped away unseen. Some swore they caught each other's gazes during the truncated number, sharing silent disappointments that no audience would ever notice. Yet technical teams buzzed with pride. Editors marveled at the precision required to stitch Brando's gravity, defying embrace into Sinatra's suave, grounded swagger. Sound mixers labored to blur audio inconsistencies where music swelled too quickly or vocals overlapped oddly, and visual effects artists patched split screen seams with shadows and whip pans, turning a potential disaster into a hidden triumph of ingenuity. In private conversations, they praised the collaboration born out of crisis, even as purists lamented what might have been. Press coverage spun two distinct narratives. Fan magazines swooned over the glamorous studio drama, focusing on Sinatra's refusal as evidence that his perfectionism knew no bounds. One magazine ran the headline, "Sinatra stands firm, saves face, drawing a direct line between the actor's dignity and his global persona. Meanwhile, more discerning journals dug into Brando's perspective, framing his fight for the lift as a warrior's struggle to redefine his range. A prominent film quarterly described the incident as Marlon Brando's unspoken manifesto for physical authenticity in musicals. Critics argued that the full lift version would have altered the story's emotional arc, transforming the vocal interplay of "Marry the Man Today" into a visceral testament to trust and vulnerability. The debate raged for months, and soon film scholars cited the conflict as emblematic of the broader tug of war between safety spectacle and star image in studio-era musicals. At the center of all this stood two careers, forever shaped by what never appeared on screen. For Sinatra, the episode reinforced his image as a consummate professional, one who would choose wardrobe, voice, and brand integrity over flashy stunts. He later leveraged the anecdote during interviews to illustrate why he remained a top build draw for decades. He protected his audience from seeing him appear weak or clumsy. Brando, by contrast, took a more defiant stance. He told close friends that the lift represented his belief in authentic, unmediated movement on film. Even when major roles shifted away from him, he pointed to guys and dolls as proof that he was willing to risk a flop for the sake of art. Biographers note that the missing moment haunted him. He described it as an unscripted scream of artistic freedom. Ultimately, each actor walked away, convinced they had preserved their personal legacy. Meanwhile, for up-and-coming filmmakers and dancers, the saga became an indispensable cautionary tale. Film schools dissected the split screen edit as a masterclass in crisis cinematography, an example of how to salvage big-budget sequences when star power interferes. In choreography workshops, teachers used storyboards of the original lift, juxtaposed with storyboards for the modified version, highlighting how camera angles and actor placement altered narrative tension. Stage directors spoke of the importance of contingency planning. Always know your key risk points, they said, and develop fallback options that respect both safety and artistic vision. Even stunt coordinators drew lessons from the lift's cancellation. Find creative alternatives rather than force performers into roles they fear. In every lecture hall and backlot meeting, the story reinforced a simple truth. The most precious cinematic moments often arise from the greatest constraints. Fan communities blossomed around theories and reconstructions. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Did the lift ever look better in full? A handful of dedicated visual effects hobbyists attempted to resurrect the original sequence using green screen outtakes, leaked test reels, and crowd-sourced audio clips. Their YouTube experiments, complete with side-by-side comparisons, racked up millions of views and sparked spirited debates. Indie filmmakers even staged live reenactments at conventions, recruiting local dancers to approximate the choreography. Social media hashtags like #FlyLostLift and Faye Sinatra's Brando trended on anniversaries of the film's release, turning a half-minute of unfilmed reality into a cultural meme. Audiences who never grew up with 1950s musicals found themselves oddly invested. Evidence that a hidden moment can become more compelling than the polished, public-facing sequence. Through all of this, a deeper truth emerged: audiences crave the unseen. The romantic promise of the Havana lift, lost before the final cut, became a more potent fantasy than any completed scene. Film historians now argue that Guys and Dolls owes part of its enduring allure not just to its score or its casting, but to the ghost of that lift. An unspoken legend that invites viewers to imagine what might have been. Every time the camera pans across a nightclub table or lingers on a dancer's flourish, we sense a missing heartbeat. an untold story woven into the fabric of the film. And perhaps this is the ultimate lesson in cinema: absence can be as powerful as presence. The unfilmed, the refused, and the reimagined have the power to shape our collective memory long after the cameras stop rolling. More than 6 decades after production wrapped, directors and choreographers around the world still pay homage to the missing Havana lift. In workshops dedicated to classic musicals, instructors challenge students to devise creative solutions whenever star limitations shift the original vision. They reference Marlon Brando's towering lift and Frank Sinatra's refusal as an iconic case study in negotiation between physical artistry and personal brand. These sessions illustrate that behind every seamless performance lies a series of calculated compromises and technical wizardry. Attendees leave armed with detailed storyboards, safety protocols, and fresh respect for the unspoken challenges on any stage. Modern musical filmmakers have incorporated split screen and forced perspective techniques refined by the Guys and Dolls team. Virtual production studios now blend motion capture with simulated wire rigs, reviving the audacious spirit of Goldwyn's crew. Yet the core lesson remains timeless: anticipate potential roadblocks when planning grand set pieces and star-driven stunts. Executive producers and stunt coordinators routinely cite that Havana sequence as a blueprint for contingencies. Within every ambitious production, fear and imagination collide to yield unexpected creative breakthroughs. Beyond technical innovation, the saga underscores a profound psychological truth about collaboration under pressure. 2 artists with contrasting craft philosophies were forced to navigate mutual respect and territorial pride. Brando's method acting insisted on raw, unfiltered expression captured in a single unbroken take. Sinatra's emphasis on polished performance prioritized persona consistency and audience perception above all else. In reconciling these opposing priorities, Goldwyn's team revealed how empathy and technical skill can forge a surprising union. For today's storytellers, that missing scene embodies the tension between narrative ambition and personal limitation. Every writer, filmmaker, or stage director can relate to beloved ideas compromised at the negotiating table. Yet the unspoken potential of those aborted moments often fuels our creative hunger more fiercely than the final executed vision. It becomes a reminder that the stories we don't tell and the scenes we never film resonate long after the credits roll. In storytelling, absence can ring louder than presence and sharpen our appetite for the next unseen twist. Culturally, the Havana lift has grown into a collective myth, swirling around notions of risk, spectacle, and ego. Fans debate whether the original on-wire performance might have overshadowed every other number in the film. Legal scholars even examine how contract clauses address performer safety versus creative mandate on similar million-dollar productions. Business schools dissect Goldwyn's memo as a cautionary example of financial exposure driven by star demands. And branding experts study Sinatra's strategic decision to preserve his public image above any sensational stunt. At its core, this conflict calls on us to balance ambition with prudence whenever our own reputations hang in the balance. Whether you are a video creator planning an elaborate shoot or a marketing manager crafting a risk-laden campaign, the principle remains universal. Identify your potential breaking points, negotiate terms before the first camera roll, and develop backup plans that honor everyone's expertise. Learn how to pivot creatively without undermining the original intent or alienating your collaborators. These lessons echo far beyond mid-century Hollywood and resonate with any team confronting complex creative challenges. Meanwhile, the TMZ style fascination with celebrity conflict finds deeper meaning when seen through this prism of artistry versus ego. It transcends simple gossip headlines and reveals something more profound about human ambition. When we replay that refused lift in our minds, we witness two masters guarding their identities and refusing to compromise where it hurts most. Each on-camera misstep became a silent battle measured in rehearsals, interview quotes, and tabloid teasers. We remain captivated by the echo of effort concealed behind a single cut. Digital historians continue to chase every scrap of rehearsal footage, hoping to reconstruct the full sequence frame by frame. Amateur editors splice leaked test reels, scoring them to fan remixes of "Fugue You for Tin Horns" or "Luck Be a Lady." These grassroots restorations invite new audiences to imagine a Havana so vivid that if only the crane shot had landed, cinematic history might have shifted overnight. The collective endeavor breathes fresh life into the missing moment, making it less an absence and more a collaborative canvas for modern creativity. In corporate boardrooms, executives draw parallels between Sinatra's refusal and any high-stakes negotiation where personal brand trumps the bottom line. They ask, when will you stand firm, and when must you yield for the greater vision? The story of that lift illustrates the practical costs and emotional currents that underlie every decision. It shows how symbolic gestures, whether a physical hoist or a spoken concession, can shape public perception, and it underscores the delicate art of balancing individual pride with collective achievement. Ultimately, the Havana lift that never made the cut stands as a paradoxical triumph of imagination. It reminds us that what the audience never sees can be as powerful as what they do. Hidden dramas feed the cultural unconscious, growing richer with each retelling, each speculative edit, each whispered anecdote. The refusal to perform a stunt birthed a legend, far greater than the lift itself could ever deliver. And perhaps that is Hollywood's greatest secret. The most mesmerizing tales often unfold in the spaces between the frames. As you sit amid backlot archives or stream archival interviews on your phone, consider this: every project carries its own Havana lift. There will be unexpected moments, demands on ego, technical hurdles, and last-minute rewrites. Embrace them, learn from them, and let their unfilmed echoes enrich your artistry. The next great scene you imagine will benefit from the ghosts of unshot possibilities, and your audience will be all the more enthralled. After all, in both film and life, the most compelling stories often begin with the words, "What if?" Decades have passed, yet film historians still gather at symposiums to dissect the singular moment when Sinatra balked at Marlon Brando's lift. Annual retrospectives at the American Cinematheque in Los Angeles routinely include panel discussions on contractual leverage versus creative vision. Archivists showcase memos and still photographs alongside rare audio interviews with gold-washed execs who negotiated around the standoff. In academic journals, scholars debate whether the omitted lift altered our cultural perception of masculinity and performance in mid-century musicals. Some posit that Sinatra's refusal acted as a catalyst, forcing studios to reassess the power balance between performer autonomy and directorial ambition. It became a case study in film schools worldwide. Never underestimate the stakes when two icons lock horns over a single shot. The myth continues to inspire bold creative risks. Virtual reality enthusiasts have since reconstructed a digital approximation of the Havana set, inviting users to don VR headsets and experience both versions of the dance floor. Through motion capture, professional dancers replicate Brando's original lift, while interactive filters simulate Sinatra's grounded performance. Museums like the Museum of the Moving Image in New York have hosted immersive installations where visitors witness split screen splices and move between projections of footage. Reports indicate these exhibits attract younger audiences who might never see the original film but are drawn by the allure of what-if scenarios. This blend of technology and cinematic archaeology stands as a testament to the enduring fascination with unfilmed moments, breathing new life into a story that began with a simple refusal and grew into collective curiosity and debate. Even the descendants and estates of both stars weigh in on the legend. Francis Ford Coppola Jr., whose father famously cast Brando in The Godfather, revealed in a recent interview that his family joked about the missing lift whenever they screened Guys and Dolls in their home. Nancy Sinatra, Frank's daughter, shared anecdotes about her father's obsession with control during rehearsals, insisting that every camera angle maintained his iconic profile. Legal advisors for the Brando estate released partially redacted contracts confirming safety clauses that prohibited any stunt presenting undue physical risk. These personal recollections and legal documents expose the intricate tapestry of agreements and anxieties that surround every major production. They remind us that beyond artistry and ego, filmmaking is also a game of risk management and legacy preservation duties. In the realm of fan fiction and creative reinterpretations, the Havana Lift takes on life beyond Goldlam and camera rigs. Writers on platforms like Wattpad and Medium compose alternate histories where Sinatra embraces the lift, transforming its symbolism into a triumphant moment of personal growth. Visual artists reconstruct storyboard panels in graphic novels, imagining the weightless ascent of John Simmons rising in slow motion. Even tabletop role-playing game designers weave the conflict into adventure modules, pitting players against an obstinate star demanding script rewrites. These community-driven projects celebrate the enduring power of narrative gaps, proving that when audiences encounter a deliberate omission, they'll fill it with imagination, emotion, and their own creative energy. The unfilmed lift invites us all to become storytellers in the shadows of Hollywood's greatest stage moment. Ultimately, the unfilmed Havana scene stands as a testament to both the fragility and resilience of collaborative art. It underlines the fact that every grand vision hinges on the alignment of personalities, risk appetites, and technical expertise. When Sinatra stepped away from the lift, he invoked a primal tension between self-preservation and spectacle that still echoes in today's high-stakes productions. Directors wrestle with ego as much as they do with budgetary constraints. Actors weigh the fear of injury against the promise of cinematic immortality. And editors, those silent magicians, find ways to weave unity out of discord. By honoring the story of the refused lift, we honor the human element at the heart of filmmaking, the messy, unpredictable, and profoundly collaborative endeavor that continues to captivate audiences around the world daily. Next time you watch a classic musical or film epic, pay attention to what might be hidden beyond the frame. Every camera cut, hesitation, or unseen stunt has its own story of negotiation, compromise, and flawed humanity. The Havana Lift that never flew may symbolize lost spectacle, but it also represents cinematic ingenuity, perseverance, and the unpredictable alchemy that gives movies their magic. When a title card proclaims, "What you are about to see is a true story," remember there is often more truth in what never appeared. The ghost of that refused lift lives on in our curiosity, compelling us to return to darkened theaters or to seek out hidden anecdotes online. We chase the perfect union of risk, art, and discovery. Every untold moment fuels imagination further,